Welcome back to Broncos Beat. Alexis Perry here alongside James Palmer, Cecil, Lammey, and Andrew Mason. Guys, as we learned last week, John Elway is taking on an elevated role as president of football operations. So the new general manager will join Vic Fangio in reporting to Elway in 2021. While Elway will be involved in big personnel decisions, it will be the GM who will make the final call. So Mace, how do you believe this new structure is going to pan out for the Denver Broncos this season?
How it pans out probably depends on the personalities of the GM and the head coach and how they fit. Of course, John Elway and Joe Ellis have both talked about them having to work hand in hand. And I've seen organizations where you have the GM and the head coach, and the GM has final say, as is going to be the case here. But effectively, they are kind of equals. And then you bring in whoever's up top, in this case, John Elway, to kind of break ties. And, oftentimes, for example, when I worked in Carolina, I saw John Fox and Marty Herney at work. They didn't want to have the person higher up break the tie. They always wanted to figure it out amongst themselves. Now, sometimes they would argue here. You'd hear a couple of slamming doors because they didn't like what each other was saying, but usually they got on the same page. So you're hoping you have that sort of agreement and accord between these two, that they can kind of decide things among themselves and not have to go up top to break any ties they have.
That accord is really important for me between Vic Fangio and the new GM, because you'll have John Elway for another year. And then what? And then you'll have Joe Ellis for another year. And then what? So you have to have two men, head coach and GM, that are ready to carry this franchise forward into a future that is going to be without John Elway, going to be without Joe Ellis eventually. So it's going to be very interesting that they get things started off right. As Mace highlighted, James, make sure you're on the same page and taking care of much in-house as you can.
Guys, I'm going to be the negative guy. I think this structure, and I'm going to look at it from a greater perspective, I think you really do need to sell the candidates, because you are now getting interviewed by John Elway, who is going to be the guy you report to and used to have the job that you're applying for. You need to sell this candidate that they are going to have final say, because if I'm applying for it, I'm going to walk in very weary, considering Elway has also said vocally this offseason, while saying they will have final say, I am going to be a part of the Von Miller negotiations. I am going to be a part of the Justin Simmons situation. Well, then where does it really fall? And I think Cecil's exactly right, because if you look at it, there is a realistic possibility. The three men that interviewed you for this job could all not be within the organization within a year. And those are the guys that decided you should be hired for this organization. And then above them, there are question marks with ownership. Now, if a new owner comes in, or Brittany Bolin, who has not been a part really in the inner circle of the hiring process, becomes the active owner and doesn't care for you either, you're in a very difficult spot early on in your tenure as the general manager.
All right, as we take a look at the candidates, we are down to 4, and the rumor mill is a churning. It is said that George Paton and Champ Kelly are the front runners, but Terry Fontenot and Brian Stark are really great candidates as well. So who would you make a case for if you were making this hire?
I'd go with George Paton, coming from out of Minnesota. Part of it is I do want to see a different set of eyes in there, somebody with a different perspective. But Peyton's got a decade going over 2 decades. Of course, he's been with the Bears, been with the Dolphins, and then has been with the Vikings going back to the mid 2000s, back to 2007. And that's something I really like, that he's somebody who's been through some different eras of Vikings football as far as the head coaches that they've had. They've had some successes. Certainly, you look at being in a challenging situation in the NFC North, staring down Aaron Rodgers, and the Vikings, even though they haven't broken through and gotten to the Super Bowl, have been a very strong challenger. And Peyton, over the course of his career, has touched a lot of different parts of personnel and scouting. You like that kind of varied background. You like that experience. For me, I think he's actually the best fit for what the Broncos are looking for.
Peyton is the hottest name, to be sure, for the Broncos, but he's the hottest name for a reason. And would he pick the Denver Broncos? That's the other question mark there. Would he pick the Lions? Where's the relationship with the Spielmans? I'm going to look to Champ Kelly as the guy that I vote for. I want Champ Kelly in this position for multiple reasons. One, you work your way up through the scouting community. As an area scout, you guys know these guys are on the road 250 days a year. You're away from your family, you're away from your home, and it's a grind. Like, scouting players all season long, all year long is a grind. And to work your way up into personnel and to where he is at now with the Chicago Bears, you have to respect that work ethic, that eye for talent, having been around Champ at those all-star games. Like, you can tell the guy knows what to look for, knows what to watch for. And then most importantly to me, he would keep most of these scouts in place. I've got several friends across the league that have been fired when new GMs take over, and they have difficulty sometimes getting back into the league. And some of these are top names that all of us would know. Well, I look at it now and say, I like the scouting staff in place for the Denver Broncos. I love their road scouts. I love the eyes for talent that they have. It's a smaller staff. I think it needs to be larger. But I also think that this staff needs to be kept in place. And I believe that Champ Kelly would come in and not clean house, but he'd come in and then get these guys on the right track because they have a good scouting staff, and I want to keep that in place.
I think Cecil's Champ Kelly's agent, but I like it. I like the sale. And he's exactly right, though. With the scouts I've talked to, they speak the world of Champ Kelly and his relationship with scouts that are, on those lower tiers below him. To me, the dream scenario is he's your Matt Russell, he's your number 2, and you get Terry Fontenot to come in and be your general manager, mainly because of what I said earlier. He comes from learning from Mickey Loomis down in New Orleans, one of the very, very few general managers that has that different background than the 3 major ones I talked about. So he has a different set of eyes and a different ability. And I will also take, Alexis, somebody that has been a part of a draft class in 2017 that was, Marshawn Lattimore, Ryan Ramczyk, Marcus Williams, Alvin
Trey
Hendrickson. I mean, anybody that's been a part of putting a draft class together like that, I will take them 7 days out of the week. I think it's a different perspective that he brings. He is liked a lot in Atlanta, but I do think he gives a different set of eyes. They are going to be in salary cap hell when Drew Brees goes and retires, but at the same time, they have built with mid-round picks very, very well in New Orleans.